My name is Tahirih Johnson. Something I enjoy doing is exercising. I exercised a lot prior to my injury, and now I do have access to an upper tone that is made for higher level injuries to use independently. There is one gym in Oklahoma City where I can use that and I can get there on the bus. And I enjoy peer counseling and advocating for the disabled. Before my injury, I was an attorney in Chicago and I skated in roller derby. That's how I was injured. Roller derby in Chicago, it was flat track. It was all female, and there would be 5 people on each team on the track at one time. There's a pivot, a jammer, and 3 blockers. And you score a point for every opposing team member you skate by. My accident was more of a freak accident. I fell, several skaters fell, and another skater coming up behind me, the stopper on the front of her skate drove into my neck and injured my spinal cord. This kind of injury is extremely rare in roller derby. Roller derby started in the 30s, and there's never been another spinal cord injury. I was 39, so I was in really good shape. I've been, working out for a long time. In my early 30s, I ran a few marathons. By my late 30s, I wasn't doing as much running. I played roller derby for 3 years at the time of my injury. My injury was not painful. It was more of a sensation that I had lost all feeling and movement below my neck. So it was a little more of a surreal situation. I never lost consciousness. So I was very aware and I think kind of hyper aware. At that point, I could only move my head. I knew it was serious because another skater, her parents were there. Her father is a doctor and her mother is a nurse. And they came over when we were waiting for the paramedics. And he asked me if I could move something. And I said I couldn't move anything at all. And he just kind of looked at me and shook his head, and this was the doctor. So I didn't know anything about spinal cord injuries or paralysis at that time, but I knew it was serious. I did kind of understand kind of quickly at that point how fragile life is. And I wasn't entirely sure if I would survive this situation. I wasn't sure what would happen. My injury is a C4-5 incomplete. The injury's from the shoulders down. Everything still moves, at least a little. And then I have sensation everywhere. My hands are very limited, especially my right hand. I was right-handed, but now I write with my left hand. And that took just about a week to start writing with my other hand. It was kind of a long week. My rehab was in Chicago, so I was pretty fortunate. I started out at Schwab, but I was able to transfer to RIC, which is now called the Shirley Ryan Lab in downtown Chicago. The biggest challenges initially was really writing was the main thing, and eating I had to learn to do again on my own. So I did get back some very basic functions while I was in rehab, but I really was too injured for independence. Now I do as much as I ever have, but I still do need a fair amount of assistance. I work part-time for the state. What I do now is more of as a disability advocate, and that's really made a big difference in my life as far as having more of an income to really live and pay bills, and then having a purpose through work. I didn't work for a number of years after my injury. Prior to working, one thing that was really helpful was the spinal cord injury support group in Chicago and again in Oklahoma City. When I was injured, when I got out of the Rehab Institute of Chicago, I actually met a peer counselor. She was someone who was more injured than I in Chicago, and she worked part-time and lived on her own. And that made a big impact that I could meet people who were kind of out there living on their own and managing their lives with a high-level injury. I didn't stay in contact with a lot of people after my injury. I wasn't very social prior to that anyway, and don't have a close family. So that didn't change a lot. So I started making more connections with other people who were injured or other people kind of in the SCI group, sort of also professionals who work in the field. I think since my injury, probably what surprises me the most is I've become a much more patient person and I've become a more generous person, I think, as far as wanting to help people. I think I've always wanted to help people, but I'm more generous as a person now. I'm a committee member regarding public transportation in Oklahoma City, and that's pretty important to me. I'm from Chicago and I'm used to public transportation, and it's more of a challenge when you're physically disabled to use public transportation. And there have been some ongoing issues. So there are some things that I've tried to do at the local level and have not happened. So now I've also gone to the state level and the federal level and have had to go to the point of filing a federal complaint, which, I'm happy to do. It's important for a lot of people. And because I take transportation, I see when agencies claim that they're doing things that they aren't doing and that aren't happening. So it's been a good experience for me to see that advocating is a process and that people also don't always know what their rights are. And that's something that has to get out into the community as well, that these are things that people can insist on. And they're not asking for any special favors. These are really things that are required. One issue we had here is that the buses have space for 2 wheelchairs. And during the pandemic, they made the rule that only 1 wheelchair at a time could be used because they were trying to do a certain amount of space in between people. But I found that the way that was being carried out was not the way that Embark, which is the name of the system here, Embark had explained. So I went to the Federal Transportation Agency and made a complaint. And they had to start letting 2 people back on again. My interest was in not having people stranded at a bus stop, especially at stops where buses were only coming by once an hour. And people often have to make a connection after that. I was really happy to see that I could actually bring that up and it made a change. It was just a matter of someone looking into it and actually finding out that that wasn't really a policy they could enact. That wasn't allowed under federal rules. One skill that would certainly revolutionize my life would be to be able to transfer with less assistance. And that's something I'm working on now. I'm also working on getting a standing wheelchair, which I think will be really helpful now that I live alone. So I'm looking forward to having a little more independence. As far as physical issues, bowel and bladder issues, and kind of just basic functioning is more important. So I don't think that walking is really the biggest issue when it comes to independence and to fulfillment in life. For someone who's newly injured, try to take your rehab seriously, really do what you can, be thankful for what you do still have and work on anything that you do have. And stay positive, because also as far as the medical community, we're still coming out of the dark ages as far as a lot of the surgeries and the clinical trials that are really just around the corner. The better your health, the better you'll be able to take advantage of opportunities that are coming up. And stay connected to people who are also injured, maybe people you meet in inpatient and then outpatient. If you can get to support groups, even if you don't have transportation or you live in a rural area, if you can at least do the Zoom meetings, it's really good to stay in touch with other people in the community